Some of you have had the joy of purchasing something that reads, "Some assembly required." And you get it home and you open up the box, and the first thing that some of you do is this. You take the instructions and you what? Throw them away. Now, all of you wives who are nudging your husbands right now saying, yeah, uh-huh, no. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Hopefully you're not like that. Hopefully you read the instructions. At least they're there for a purpose. Now, I question sometimes actually who wrote the instructions and which language they actually wrote it in, because it doesn't seem to be English to me sometimes when I'm reading them. But one time I was assembling a shelving unit, and I had gone through either 4 or 5 steps. I can't, take me down just a little bit, Greg, please. Just a little bit on the mic. I was either on step 4 or 5. Let's just say 5. I'm on step 5 and I'm reading the instructions, and the instructions are telling me to do something. And I'm looking at the instructions and I'm looking at the shelving unit and I'm saying, I can't get there from here. Something isn't right in this shelving unit. I can't do what they're asking me to do at this point in the instructions. And I thought they're asking me to do this, and it is impossible to do that. So I said, And I went back in the instructions to page 1. And I noticed in the instructions that I overlooked the very first step in the instructions, the beginning step. I read some of the other stuff in step 1, but the very first thing that I needed to do to make sure that when I got to step 5, I could do what they were asking me to do in step 5, I had completely overlooked in step 1. So guess what I had to do? Tear it apart and start all over again. All of you people who responded there, you must know what I'm talking about, right? You been there before? It is the very same thing when we talk about origins. Remember, every worldview answers the question, where did I come from? But if we don't go far enough back, if we don't go back to the very beginning, to very step number 1, and we're looking over here down the road thousands and thousands of years over here in step number 5, and we're going, I don't know how I can possibly do step number 5 because it doesn't seem to fit in what they're asking me to do. Why? Because we have forgotten the origins. We have forgotten the very beginning. And if we go back to the very beginning, which is the very foundation for everything, then we will better understand how we can continue on in this life if we don't forget origins. Francis Schaeffer was right when he said that the question of origins is the most important question that must be answered. From the answer flows everything else. If we get origins wrong, we get everything wrong. Did you catch that? If we get the origins wrong, everything else is affected by the origins. And if we miss the beginning, we miss it all. It affects everything in our life. Let's go back to the beginning, Genesis chapter 1. We will look at God's creative act here in Genesis chapter 1. We will move through it rather quickly because Genesis chapter 1 is going to set the foundation on which we are going to build what we're going to talk about today. The foundation is here in Genesis chapter 1, but we will move rather quickly through it. There won't be a lot of talking about each individual act here in Genesis. We'll just make mention of what God did on a particular day. Look at verses 1 and 2. This takes us back to the very beginning, verses 1 and 2. In the beginning, God created the heavens, or some translations say heaven, the idea of all together, the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. The very beginning. The beginning of time itself. When the timeless God spoke the heavens and the earth into existence, He established time. Not only did He establish time, for there was no time before this, also we here see the beginning of matter. Matter is not some eternal substance where when God came along, however powerful He may be, He took the existing matter and formed it together in what we know as the heaven and the earth. No. The text very clearly says God created out of nothing everything that we see today. He didn't take created matter that is apparently eternal and form the heavens and the earth. No, he spoke matter into existence at this point. Hebrews chapter 11 says this, by faith we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible. He didn't take created matter and form it together. No, he created matter here at the very beginning. For God created the heavens and the earth. The Elohim, the plural in majesty, the creator, the sustainer, the provider, God of all life, speaks the worlds into existence. Now, the Bible does not discuss the origin of God. He has always existed. It doesn't even deal with that. It says in the beginning, when he made matter and time, he was already present. He was already there. So it doesn't talk about the origins of God. And when he says heaven or heavens and earth, he's talking about the whole created order here. And then he gives us in verses 3 through 30 the rest of the creation story. Truth. God brings out of order, out of disorder, out of chaos, an order. He established it. Now, there is what's known as the gap theory that some say between verses 1 and 2. There's this gap of time, of unknown time. And we don't have time in the sermon today to talk about the gap theory. If you would like to talk to me later about that. The whole gap theory hinges on the word was being translated become. And so we're not going to talk about that today, but it is a theory that's out there. So here we see in the beginning, God makes matter, God makes time, God speaks the worlds into existence, and now we're going to see exactly what he did day by day as we work through God's creative days. Look at verses 3 through 30. We'll go each day, day by day. And God said, let there be light. So the heavens and the earth are created, and then light exists. Not the sun or the moon, but the light exists. And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. Here, as we read through Genesis chapter 1, we need to understand this. Genesis chapter 1 is geocentric. You're saying, whoa, what does that mean? It simply means it is from the perspective as if one is standing on the earth. Not from God looking down or from looking from the moon on down, but no, if we were standing on the earth, this is what you would see in Genesis chapter 1. So it's geocentric. So as God speaks, he's speaking as if one is watching from the earth. Think about it as we go through that. So here, day 1. As we go through Genesis chapter 1, we're going to see that God said over 10 times. God said, God said, God said, God spoke. God's word are powerful. By the word of the Lord, the heavens were made, and by the breath of his mouth, all their host. And all at once, light filled the universe. The great expanse of the universe that we cannot even measure, light filled it all. Here we see that God named the light day. By naming something in the Hebrew context, what it simply means is you have power over the object that you are naming. So we see here the sovereignty of God over all of the created order. God calls the light day. He names it. He gives it its meaning. Then we see the evening and the morning were the first day. Now, I understand there are different theories out there about young earth, old earth, whether a day is a large period of time, thousands or millions of years, and that's how we understand when it says 6 days. It wasn't really 6 literal days. It was 6 periods of time, and we don't know how long they were. Well, let me give you a hint. In the Hebrew Old Testament, every single time the word day appears and before it an ordinal number stands, it is always a 24-hour period. Always. Sometimes you'll see the day of the Lord. That is a period of time. We don't know when it is, but when you put a cardinal number in front of the word day, every time in the Old Testament, it is a 24-hour period. It is a day as we understand it. Day 2. God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. The separation of the waters. God tells the waters where to go. He commands the waters. Doesn't that sound a little bit familiar when we come to the New Testament? Who's the one in the boat that said, be still, waters, and they were still? Jesus. God has power over the waters. So day 3. And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together. So you see, He's separated the waters. He's going to gather them together into one place and let the dry land appear. Now, whether the waters went down or the land came up, I don't know, but dry land appeared. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together He called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. Remember that word, it comes up again. Each according to its kind on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the third day. So the plants, the grasses, the grains, the fruit, each having the seed in itself after its kind. So a orange tree is not going to produce apples. That's not after its kind. But an apple tree will produce apples. And God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night. Now we see the sun, the moon, and the stars being created. First there was just light. Now on this day, on the fourth day, and let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and years, and let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the fourth day. So here we see the creation of the sun, the moon, the stars. In other cultures, these become idols. These become things that are worshipped. But here we see the one who placed the sun, the moon, the stars in the expanse of heaven. For the one who places them is far greater than the objects themselves. Why bow down to the sun? Why have the stars direct your path in life instead of the one who made the stars and placed them in their appointed order? For the stars are not there to guide us humans, but to declare the glory of God. Not only were the sun, the moon, and the stars there for a reason to declare the glory of God, they also brought about a way to mark feast days, a way to mark the rhythms of life. For we have summer, fall, and winter, and spring, the seasons that we have. For the signs and the times now mark the rhythms of life, the cycle of rest and work and worship that God establishes. Day number 5. And God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the heaven across the expanse of the heaven. So God created the great sea creatures. Some translations say monsters, Leviathan perhaps, and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them. Here's the first instance of God blessing part of His creation. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning the 5th day. Now, we come to the pinnacle of God's creation. We come to the very point where God does something different than He did up to this point with anything else on day 6. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping things, that beasts of the earth according to their, kinds. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God created He him. Male and female He created them. And God blessed them. Here's a second instance of blessing. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with its seed and its fruit. You shall have them for food. To every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has a breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. So now we see that creation reaches its final climax. All of the other animals, none of the other animals have the markation of created in God's own image. The other beasts, the other animals, none of them were marked with this designation, created in the image of God. Man formed out of the dust of the ground, and God breathes in him the breath of life, and he becomes a living being, a living soul. And no other animal was like that. The image of God was imparted to man. Now, what is this image, this likeness of God? Well, it can't be a body, because God doesn't have a body. God is spirit. So it can't be this physical body that we have that communicates to the outside world. What is this image and this likeness of God that man has been created in? Well, it has the idea of an intellect, of being able to reason, to think. It also has an understanding of moral nature, for man was created in original righteousness, pure, perfect before the fall. So we have this moral nature in man as well. Man has the ability to communicate with others as God does. Man has the power to create, and in man's sense, it's to rearrange the created order. In God's sense, it's to bring out of nothing something. But he has creative abilities. He has an emotional nature that transcends the instinct of animals. That's the image and the likeness of God that God has placed into humanity, into us as human beings. Since man is God's image bearer, murder, therefore, merits the strongest retribution. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. Why? For God made man in his own image. So we see, God says to man, now you be fruitful and multiply, and you fill the earth up, and you subdue it. And that is a sense not in that it's unruly, you need to beat it in subjection. That's not the idea. To subdue it means to bring out what is potentially there in the earth. Manage creation, bring out what is there to my glory. In that sense, subdue. That's what man is to do. Now look at verse number 31, conclusion. And God saw everything that he had made. Everything. And behold, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. This is reality. This is truth. Now, the problem is, if we don't understand origins, if we accept any other alien philosophy into our life, it dramatically affects the way that we think and act. If we set aside creation, this reality that God has established for us, and said, it's a nice story, but I think it could have been this way, it will affect everything that we do. As a matter of fact, this is what we are being told today. Here's a great example of what you and I as Christians are being told today. A guy from USA Today, Tom Crottonmaker, this is what he says. He argues that Christians are fighting a losing battle when it comes to defending a biblical worldview in terms of creation. Just what we read right now. He says to us, you are fighting a losing battle when you talk about creation. His solution is this. He suggests this to us. Let science be science, and let religion prevail in the vast areas where science has little or nothing to offer. Let science be science, what he would consider truth or facts, and let religion prevail in the area where it's good at, that's values, belief, and faith. So what has he done to us in that statement? Look at this illustration up here. This is exactly what he's saying to us. There is a two-story way of looking at life. And that is, on the bottom story are facts based on naturalism and evolutionary Darwinism, which are binding on everyone because they are truth, they are facts. But in the upper level, we have beliefs, values, faith, are all based on what? Individual choices. So if believing in Jesus is good for you, it may not be good for me. It's not binding on me. I'm glad that you believe that and it's good for you. It makes you feel good in life, but that's not binding on me. What we have done is we have made a dichotomy in the way that we live. And that goes into this next slide. This is what we are told. In the public sphere, we only want to hear about scientific knowledge. That is translated evolutionary Darwinism. In the private sphere, you can have all of the personal preferences that you like, all the values, the beliefs, everything. You just keep it where? In your private sphere. Don't you dare bring Christianity into the public sphere, because we can't handle that, because it's not based on fact, is what they're trying to tell us. It's not truth. It's only faith, values, or belief. That's the duality that we're living in. That's what's being pressed upon us every day. Francis Schaeffer said this in an address to Notre Dame. It's going to come up on the screen. Christianity is not a series of truths in the plural, but rather truth spelled with a capital T. Truth about total reality, not just about religious things. It's truth about creation. Biblical Christianity is truth concerning total reality and the intellectual holding of that total truth and living in the light of that truth. It's not about this idea of that, oh yeah, you can have these truths, these facts on or above, and then what you believe in your public life, in your private life, that's good for you. Doesn't have to apply to me though. What does creation teach us? If we need to go back to the origin, what is it trying to tell us as we go through life? What is it trying to impart to us, this total truth? The first thing it's trying to tell us is this. Creation provides the basis for accountability. For there is a sovereign creator God that man must answer to. If man as an individual being in evolutionary Darwinism would say that, we just come from a slimy, mucky thing in the sea and we crawled out eventually and came into what we know as man today, there is no person or thing that we're accountable to because it happened by random chance. But creation provides a basis for accountability. In evolutionary Darwinism, man is accountable to no one. He's not responsible to anyone. Does that look like today? Man says, I'm not responsible for that. That's my parents' fault. I'm not responsible for that. I don't have to give an account to you or to any God. 2, creation provides for the rhythms, a basis for the rhythms of life. We saw it here. There were seasons, there were days, there were years, there were festival times. We know in the fall, what we have is Thanksgiving. It's part of the seasons of life. It provides this rhythm, this idea of working hard 6 days and taking a day off at that time. So don't be a workaholic is what creation is trying to say to us. Make sure that you have that day to set aside to rest and to worship me. Work hard, but make sure you rest too. And when we mess up the rhythms of life, it messes up everything about us. 3rd, creation provides a basis for objective, universal morals. Think about this for a second. Man is created in the image of God. God is a moral being. He is righteous. He is holy. There's no imperfections in him. And we are created in his image. We are therefore moral agents. We understand morality because there is a standard by which we measure morality, and that is God himself. And creation provides the basis for this objective, universal moral because God never changes. It applies to all people of all time, of all ages, because the standard is God. And even the 10 Commandments themselves find their rationale here in the creation. God is creator. Don't worship idols. Man is made in God's image, so respect your parents. Don't lie. Don't murder. Don't steal. Don't sleep with your neighbor's wife. Why? Because man is created in God's image. All the rationale of the 10 Commandments are found in the creation. But you see, evolutionary Darwinism, naturalism, has no basis of morality. Think about it. If we just evolved, there therefore is no standard of morality. So who makes the standard of morality? Society, or in the evolutionary view, the strongest. For the strongest will always overcome the weakest, and the weakest will die out. So the strongest makes the rules. There is no basis for morality in evolution. It's not there. What happens is we have morality by what's called a social construct. For example, when society says something is good, it becomes good. Because there's no standard to measure it by. Whatever society says is good is good. Whatever society says is evil is evil. How can people rationalize human sacrifices where they cut people's hearts out? It becomes a norm in society. Why? Because there's no standard of morals to measure by. Society sets the standard. Look at what's happening to around us today. How many things that we know are absolutely wrong are being done in society today under the name of good? Why? Because society is setting the standard. Because society right now is living under the idea of evolutionary Darwinism and not the biblical worldview. So we understand also, with those with a biblical worldview, we understand that all law is rooted in the morality of God. Every law is rooted in the morality of God. So we make laws based on the morality of God. We don't want people to murder. There used to be a time to have adultery was punishable by more than just, oh, that was really bad. So we make laws based on the morality of God. But the problem with evolutionary Darwinism is law is also a social construct. Whoever's the powerful makes the laws. There's no standard whereby to judge whether law is good or bad. Simply they make it because society says, okay, this is good. Whatever works best is good for you. I used to like Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., the one appointed by Teddy Roosevelt to the Supreme Court in 1902, but I completely disagree with him. This is what he says. The justification for any given law is not that it represents an eternal principle. I disagree. But that it helps bring out a social end which we desire. We make laws so we can shape society, not based on the morality of God. Is that happening today? 4, creation provides the basis for human value. Why? Because we are created in the image of God. Every human is valuable. All unborn babies, not a glob of mass in a woman's womb, but it is a living human being. It's valuable. To love your neighbor as yourself. Why do we do that? Because people are created in the image of God. Human beings are valuable. There is no room in those with a biblical worldview for racism. It cannot exist. Why? Because we are all created in the image of God. You can't say this particular skin color is less of the image of God than this particular skin color. You can't do that. Human beings are created in the image of God. There is no place for racism. And you say, oh, in the church there's no racism. Our friend Dean Davis, some of you know him, was reporting to us of the churches of Louisiana. And he said flat out, they are racist. There's no room for racism. When we understand that every human being is created in the image of God, has God's image. But evolutionary Darwinism wants to say that value is not inherent in the person. In other words, you being in the created image, your value is not in you. But your value is in what you can add to society or what you can produce. Think about that for a second. Value is not inherent, created in the image of God, but rather based on what one can produce for society or what one can add to society. I used to like, and this is a good demonstration of exactly what I'm talking about, I used to like also George Bernard Shaw until I heard him say this. I heard the actual video or the filming of this. He said, I think it would be a good thing to make everybody come before a properly appointed board, just as he might come before the income tax commissioners and say every 5 or 7 years, just put them there and say, sir or madam, will you be kind enough to justify your existence? If you're not producing as much as you consume, or perhaps a little more, then clearly we cannot use the big organization of our society for the purpose of keeping you alive. Because your life does not benefit us and it can't be of very much use to you. I don't want to punish anybody, but there are an extraordinary number of people whom I want to kill. That is evolutionary Darwinism to its extreme. There is no value in human life. Only what you can produce for society makes you useful. Those who can't produce are not useful in an evolutionary Darwinism worldview. But the Bible says, no, that's not true. The truth is, man is created in the image of God. 5, creation provides a basis for true science. True science is this. God created and made order in this universe. He established laws of the universe, and we discover those laws, we discover that order, we discover God's creation as we study it as good scientists. If we start at the wrong point and say, oh, everything just evolved, then whatever we're viewing, we can put whatever we think into that if we forget the origins. True science is based on creation. It's observable, ordered laws that can be discovered through science. I guarantee you, if I climb the bell tower and I step off the bell tower, what's going to happen? I'll fall. Why? There's order in this universe. It's called gravity. I will be sucked to the ground. Now, let me show you a couple slides. If I was walking along and I came across these rocks, this little mountain, I could look at it and I could say, if I didn't have a biblical worldview, I could say, well, maybe over time and the wind and the rain and erosion, over time, maybe that could have appeared or be made the way that it looks right now. I mean, that's possible. But if I came to this mountain and I looked at this mountain, no rational human being would ever say, oh, it was just a matter of time and wind and erosion and water, and all of a sudden this came about. No rational human being would say that. What would they say? There is somebody behind it that designed those faces. And then they had the power and the ability to shape those faces on that mountain. They had the ability to make that. No one in their right mind would say that just happened. No one would say that. And as we look at God's ordered creation, as we look into the depths of the DNA of man, or into some of the bacteria that we can study with microscopes, big microscopes, we can look into it and we can see an ordered creation. We can see that somebody designed this. It just didn't happen. It was designed. There has to be an intelligence that's greater than whatever it is that was designed to make what it is. Sixthly, I lost track. Creation provides the basis for human purpose. Human purpose. God told the man and woman, be fruitful and multiply, and order the earth and its inhabitants to yield its riches and accomplish God's purposes. What he said to them is this: establish a society, civilization, if you want to call that, or a culture. Establish that. As a matter of fact, when God told them to tend the garden, the word in Latin is cultivate. Cultivate the garden. Create a culture. So we call that the cultural mandate. Man has a purpose. He's to go out as an image bearer of God, knowing morality, knowing the creation, and to establish a culture that reflects God and God's morality and God's wisdom and God's might. That's what he's supposed to do. But you see, evolutionary Darwinism, there is no purpose. Because why? We came from the sludge in the ground, and we just over billions of years walked out of the sludge and walked around, stood up straight, and we walk around. We have no purpose. And that's the problem with many of our teenagers and many adults today. They do not have a sense of purpose in their life because they have been fed evolutionary Darwinism from birth. They misunderstand the origins. In evolutionary Darwinism, everything is chance, random, it's deterministic. There is no free will because the evolutionists tell us you are instinctively reacting to something, which means you have no free will in evolutionary Darwinism. Now, creation gives us all of those things. It provides a basis for everything. This is what I say in conclusion to that. It is time. We need to go on the offensive in our society. We need to go on the offensive and compel evolutionary Darwinists to face the logical conclusions of their own premises. One who says law is just law by whoever makes the law. There is no standard of morality. And yet the evolutionary Darwinist loves the Ten Commandments. You say, well, how can that be? That's ordered by God. That's given by God. I'll tell you how it is. No evolutionary Darwinist wants to be murdered. I guarantee it. No evolutionary Darwinist wants his wife or his daughter to be raped. I guarantee that. And what they're trying to tell us is, we want to live by your standard of morality that's there. We want the benefits of that, but we certainly don't want to claim that there's any objective universal standard of morality in life. We want to do our own thing. Yeah, but they surely appreciate the laws that are based on what? God's morals. You can't have it both ways. And it's time for us at the water cooler, it's time for us in our neighborhoods, or even in our own households, to go on the offensive. It's time to us to start doing something that we don't like to do sometimes as Christians. I know it's a bad word. I know it is. Think. We need to think. We need to stop letting society tell us your private life is your thing. Don't bring your Christianity to the public sphere because it's only based on beliefs, values, and faith. And we're going to come to them and we're going to say, no, it's not. It's based on truth. It's based on fact. It's based on total reality. And it's time for us to go on the offensive. It's time for us to change the society. Why do we have so many millions of babies being killed every year? Because evolutionary Darwinism says they have no value. They have no purpose. They don't serve my mother or the father. They're an inconvenience to them. Get rid of them. That's what we're told. For it truly affects everything that we do. Our laws, our education, our morality. It's all wrapped up in the origin of creation. You know, if I was thirsty, I would go get a glass of H2O, which is water. And it would satisfy my thirst. But let's say I couldn't find any H2O, but I was rummaging around and I found a bottle of H2O2. And I said, well, that's pretty close to H2O. I mean, that's just one atom off. It's instead of H2O as an O1 oxygen atom, has two oxygen atoms. I mean, come on, that's not a big deal. H2O2, it's really close to H2O, isn't it? I could just drink that. I mean, come on, it's just one more oxygen atom. Well, H2O2 is hydrogen peroxide. In small amounts, you can gargle in your mouth, but in full strength, if you drink it, it can be lethal. Just one little bit off. Just a little bit. And it becomes deadly to me. If we don't get origins right, it is deadly. Ask all the babies who have been aborted. Look at the history of man and look at our society today. And tell me how important it is for us to understand origins. It affects everything in our lives. Father, I am so glad that you have revealed yourself in your word. I do have you as an eyewitness to understand creation. You were there, you created. You're telling me how it went. I was not there, I did not see it with my eyes. But as I look around your creative order, I can see your fingerprints all over the place. I can see your design in so many things. To me, there is the evidence of the reality of a creator God, because your fingerprints are all over the place. I thank you, Father, that creation is truth. It is not error. It is not just faith or values or beliefs. It is total truth, whereby I can live my life on. And I pray for us as a society that we would move away from evolutionary Darwinism and back to the origins, back to the creation, and understand all of those things that are wrapped up in the creation so that our society can be exactly what you wanted it to be. A culture of people with a morality based on who you are, loving their neighbor as themselves, and serving one another. Father, bring us back to the beginning so that we can understand. In Jesus' name, amen.